Filtration is a really complex process of conversion, chemistry, and bacteria. It's all a part of a massive biological cycle. And in this episode of a new series, Filtration 101, we're going to talk about beneficial bacteria and why they matter so much more than we think. Hello everyone, this is Bentley. Welcome to the first episode of Filtration 101. This is going to be a kind of high-level series to teach us the basics of what is actually going on in the filtration process and why certain things matter and what certain types of filtration are actually doing in our aquariums. We're going to focus on the powerhouse of all of filtration, beneficial bacteria. Now, often when we think of filtration, we think chemical, mechanical, biological. Bacteria is our biological filtration, and more importantly, this is what happens not only in nature, but in all of our aquariums. This is the real powerhouse of turning the toxic chemicals, such as our fish waste, leftover fish food, dying plant matter, etc., into things that are safe within our aquarium and aren't going to cause issues for our fish. There are three types of beneficial bacteria. The very first one is the most common, aerobic. Aerobic basically means with oxygen, or roughly speaking, is in oxygenated environments. This is almost always going to be every type of filtration we normally use. So whether it's a canister filter, a hang on the back, a sponge filter, a moving bed filter, all of these are using movement and air to generate colonies of oxygen-rich bacteria that are going to oxidize our chemicals by basically adding oxygen to them to turn them into safer and safer compounds. In the case of aerobic bacteria, when our fish poo, pee, whatever, right, their waste, that creates ammonia, or NH4. NH4, when it goes to wherever our colony is, which this colony will populate your gravel, your surfaces, your rock, your hardscape, your plants. But most commonly, we use filters to make a condensed, easily manageable, basically super powerhouse of these bacteria. When they get ammonia, they absorb the ammonia and use the nitrogen that is a part of that ammonia. So it's NH4, nitrogen with 4 hydrogen molecules. A little bit of chemistry, I know, but trust me. Then they consume that hydrogen, and the oxygen that's in the environment they use as a part of the process of absorbing and respiring this into nitrite, which is NO2. So 1 nitrogen, 2 oxygen. Then the other bacteria that is going to be a part of this process in our aerobic bacteria is going to convert our nitrite, another chemical that is toxic to our beloved fish, into nitrate, NO3. So basically what's happening is it's absorbing the nitrite, NO2. It is adding another molecule of oxygen. They're fusing together, and it is respiring a much safer chemical, NO3, nitrate. Now, in most of our planet aquariums, then from there, the way that we keep our nitrates in check is the plants. The plants can consume nitrate. They need this as one of their fundamental growth blocks. It's very, very important for the entire process of photosynthesis. That gets us into another type of biological filtration to get rid of the nitrogen. However, there are 2 other types of beneficial bacteria that help deal with nitrogen. The first and most common that we're going to talk about is anaerobic bacteria, or without oxygen. This bacteria lives in areas that are completely devoid of oxygen, and most commonly what we find this in is the process of like the deep sand bed or deep gravel bed. You can find folks that will talk about this kind of system in saltwater, brackish water. In the case of freshwater, one of the best examples of explaining how this works and why it's a good process is Father Fish. So for those who want to check out some of his videos, he's got great explanations. I'll let him cover that. But let's talk about the basics. When we get into this area where there's no oxygen whatsoever, we produce a different type of bacteria, anaerobic bacteria, and instead of having oxygen in its environment, it consumes oxygen. So instead of turning ammonia into nitrite, and then that nitrite turning into nitrate, what instead happens in anaerobic conditions is the bacteria will consume nitrate, remove some of the oxygen for it, and respire it as nitrite. Now, in certain cases, this is really, really beneficial. We combine it with aerobic bacteria, right? We are producing all this nitrate, and nitrate in general in low concentrations is non-toxic, unlike ammonia and nitrite. However, as we start getting over 40 parts per million, there's lots of scientific studies out there that will show you there are some serious negative impacts of having these higher concentrations of nitrate. Anaerobic bacteria will reconvert that back to nitrites, and it consumes a significant amount of that nitrate in order to get its oxygen, in order to produce a much smaller amount of nitrite. And then that nitrite goes to your aerobic bacteria colony and gets turned into a smaller amount of nitrate. And the cycle works in tandem to make sure that there's not too much nitrate, nitrite, or ammonia in your system. Is there some major benefits here? Yes. It means that you don't require things like plants or water changes in order to keep your nitrate levels low. The downside actually comes with a lot of misconception. So, in a part of the process of anaerobic bacteria converting nitrate to nitrite, it also produces hydrogen sulfide. Think of like the sulfuric smell that you get with eggs or like a hot spring, something like that. This is hydrogen sulfide. Now, the misconception here is that hydrogen sulfide is toxic and dangerous to our fish. The reality here is actually that the anaerobic bacteria is never producing enough hydrogen sulfide to where it's dangerous. Where we typically run into problems with anaerobic bacteria is when we go to gravel vac. So we'll go into clean, and we'll try to clean really deep to get all the mulm that we see down in that deep sand bed out. But what we're actually doing is removing the mulm, which at this point has become non-volatile. It's just a housing ground for all this anaerobic bacteria, and in some cases, as long as it's not too deep, other aerobic bacterias. We're removing that bacteria colony. Now there's nothing to process the nitrite, or in some cases even a bunch of the ammonia. And all of a sudden we cause a spike in ammonia and nitrite, which becomes extremely toxic to our fish very, very fast. Typically, if you are working with an aerobic and anaerobic combo system, deep sand bed with some other powered filter, if you are going to gravel vac, you only lightly skim the surface. You never want to push down into that deep sand bed that will disturb the colony and can put your fish at serious risk. The final is a little less known, although thankfully there are some people that are really championing this, especially if you ever have watched Dr. Kevin Novak, and that is Anoxic bacteria, or the Anoxic Filtration system. So let's briefly get an understanding of what this means. Aerobic means with oxygen. Anaerobic means devoid of oxygen. Anoxic is extremely low oxygen. From a chemical perspective, and I'm trying not to make this too sciencey, I promise, but what this usually means is that what oxygen is present in an anoxic environment is bonded to some other chemical. So an example would be like nitrate, which is nitrogen bonded to oxygen. That is how the oxygen is present. It's usually not free oxygen like in an aerobic bacteria environment or like when we're pushing air into our aquarium, okay? This environment is really good at two things. One, it converts ammonia directly to nitrate. You might think, how is it doing this? Very typically, the system is using either a plenum or a biocenosis basket, which is basically, it's designed to do very slow movement. The water will move around. An ionically charged material that is negatively charged will attract positively charged chemicals. Ammonia in our aquarium is technically NH4 plus. It's positive charged. So what it does is, think of it like a magnet, right? You have the plus side and the negative side. That negative side pulls that plus molecule over, and on the outside areas where there is oxygen, ammonia gets converted to nitrites, or in some cases, directly to nitrate. And then what happens is, as it keeps getting pulled deeper into where there's no oxygen, there's a different colony of bacteria that exists that consumes that oxygen, just like an anaerobic environment, and will expel pure nitrogen gas, N2. This is not toxic, and because it is a gaseous form, it goes up, it gets up to the surface of our water, goes out of the tank. It's not a compound that stays in the water very long. Typically, this is combined in the use of plants in what is called a biocenosis basket. This is really, really common in big pond filtration, koi ponds, especially in the last 10 to 15 years. In some cases, this research has been around for about 20 years, but 10 to 15 years it's become way more popular. If you watch someone like Greg Wittsock, the pond guy, you are going to see a constant use of these biocenosis baskets, right? They are used in order to filter all that pond water that's running through, because it runs lightly over the top and the ions get attracted down, and there's a mixture of plants. I kind of commonly call it a bog filter, but it's a mixture of things that are creating this perfect filter environment that very naturally absorbs ammonia, nitrogen, and nitrite, keeps your fish very healthy. What's the downside to the anoxic system? It typically cannot handle very high bioloads. So we can't have a high stocking rate of fish as easily. And also, aerobic bacteria can be colonized very, very quickly. It's very easy to jumpstart aerobic bacteria. Anaerobic and anoxic, the two of them combined, both take a very long time to set up. It's a slow process. However, one of the biggest benefits to anoxic filtration is it not only handles ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate because of the way that it's designed, it also will convert phosphates, which in high levels can be really, really great for algae creation, but terrible for us who want pretty planted tanks, into just phosphorus. It consumes the oxygen off the phosphate and makes it so it's just safe phosphorus that then doesn't get taken advantage of as much. So not only does it remove nitrates, it removes phosphate. And in the way that the system is designed, when it is combined with plants, the plants are typically there to handle most of the ammonia. Because what tends to happen in this system is plants can more easily uptake ammonia at their roots than they do nitrates up in the water system, right? So if we think of a stem plant, a lot of times we think, oh, they're consuming the nitrogen. Well, ammonia is a part of the nitrogen cycle in the nitrogen compounds, right? At the root level, it is easier for plants to consume and use ammonia than it is to consume and use nitrate. So what it's doing is it's creating this symbiotic environment where we're getting rid of or converting a lot of the nitrite and nitrate directly to nitrogen gas to make it safe. And consuming a lot of the nitrates and leaving an amount of the ammonia, even though we're still consuming some of that, and making that available to plants. The plants then consume that ammonia. It's much easier for them. They, in tandem, create an environment that is extremely healthy for fish. However, because of the time it takes to set up this environment and the way that it processes things, you might require a much larger filtration system to handle higher stocking of fish than you would with aerobic bacteria. So, which one's the best? Which one matters the most? Why would you do one over the other? It's kind of all opinion. Now, if you want to create a supernatural environment, and you don't usually put a lot of fish in your fish tank, anoxic filtration can be incredible. Now, if you really want more about that, definitely check out Dr. Novak's channel. He has tons and tons of video explaining the process, showing you how to set up plenums, biocenosis baskets, explaining like the science behind this and why a lot of the misconceptions that people have. Definitely check him out. It's going to be a far more in-depth than what I'm going to give you. I'm trying to go over a real high level. In the case of anaerobic environments, the deep sand bed, again, Father Fish is a great example, someone who can explain a lot of this stuff. But basically, what we're doing is creating an environment that will consume nitrate so that we're not required to have plants or required to do water changes. And then finally, aerobic bacteria is the easiest to produce. It consumes high levels of ammonia and nitrite, but produces nitrate in the offset. So usually in most of our planted tanks, we have like a canister or a hang-on-back or sponge filters. That's consuming all that ammonia and nitrite, producing nitrate. And the plants consume the nitrate. We can make plants work in tandem with the other systems for different effects, and it kind of depends on what you're trying to go for. Anoxic and anaerobic environments take a long time to set up, but require very minimal maintenance. You basically never have to clean an anoxic filtration system. Now, there's a lot of details behind this. Let Dr. Novak explain that to you, okay? I want to be really clear. Go there for the science, and if there's enough demand, I'll make a longer-term anoxic filtration explanation. But just understand that basically the best way to kind of set up what the best is combining the two. Have anoxic filtration with aerobic filtration, or anaerobic with aerobic. Now, where I would say, in general, I would caution you personally, this is my personal opinion, there's a high risk if you mess up or have something that goes messing with your deep sand bed that you can interrupt the bacterial colony there and cause that ammonia and nitrite spike. Don't worry about the sulfur. The hydrogen sulfide's not the issue, okay? It's that spike because you ruin that colony. Because if you expose it to a bunch of oxygen, in a high oxygen environment, it dies. Right? Anoxic, the way that the system is designed, protects it naturally. So you can combine anoxic in a plenum, or by, let's say you have a sump, you could have a biocenosis basket in your sump, but also be running all the rest of your normal filtration, like your mechanical filtration to filter out the particulates and things like that. And it will combine the two, and it creates this really effective system for not only keeping very clean, great water for our fish, but also fighting algae. Aerobic doesn't really fight algae as well because aerobic doesn't also take away the phosphates. So if you have huge concerns about algae and algae maintenance, you might want to look into anoxic. If you want the easiest to set up, it's just aerobic. Whether it's a sponge filter, a hang-on-back, a canister, you just set it up as you would normally. You're going to create an aerobic bacteria colony very, very quick. Me personally, if I'm going to go like really in-depth in the crazy system with, yeah, you're eventually going to see me set this up, anoxic plus aerobic, because I want to make sure that my planted tank fights algae as much as possible. So that's Filtration 101's first chapter. I'm going to do a little bit more of this, but don't expect like this super huge in-depth. There's tons of great videos out there that explain like the nitrogen cycle, anoxic filtration, the deep sand bed, how aerobic bacteria really work at like a scientific level. You can find all this stuff out there. I just wanted to do a high-level view comparing the three because, honestly, I think it's one of the things that is not done as frequently, is understanding what each of those bacteria are doing inside of your tank. Because realistically, when it comes to filtration, that bacteria is what is making all the magic work. That is the magic voodoo of an aquarium that, whether we didn't know it way back in the day or we do know it now, that's what really was making sure that our fish could survive, be healthy, thrive. Danger Noodle could lay right behind me and be a lazy bud on the back of the camera. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a little thumbs up, give it a little like, shoot me a comment down below if there's anything you learned. Maybe there's something that you've been wanting to try, whatever. I'd love to hear from you guys. You know, I love your comments. I love interacting with you. If you think I got too long-winded on one part of this, you hit thumbs down twice, and then I'll make more of these. Because now I know secretly that hate means love. If you're new to this channel, maybe consider subscribing. Ring that little notification bell. I have a live stream every Tuesday. We've got videos every Saturday. Lots and lots of fish content. For the members, thank you so much. Look forward to some other awesome stuff coming up in member content. The usuals. You know how it is. Check me out on Instagram. Blah, 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 blah. YouTube algorithm magic. Stupid YouTuber stuff. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.